In 1962, a French geologist named Michel Siffre climbed down into a glacier cave in the Alps and sealed himself inside. No clocks, no sunlight, no way to measure time at all. He planned to stay for 2 months, when he finally emerged and called the surface team to say he was ready to come up. They told him something that changed how scientists think about the human mind forever. He had been down there for 58 days. He thought it had been 25. More than a month of his life had simply ceased to exist. He wasn't sick. He wasn't injured. His mind was working perfectly by every measure he could apply to it. He had eaten, slept, thought, written notes, conducted experiments. He had lived an entire month of experience, and his brain had quietly compressed it into nothing. Siffre went back in 1972, this time for 6 months. The same thing happened. Weeks vanished. His internal sense of time drifted so far from reality that by the end he was living on a 48-hour cycle, sleeping and waking on a rhythm completely disconnected from the planet he was living on. When he emerged, he had aged 6 months. His brain thought it had been far less. He spent the rest of his career trying to explain what had happened to him. He never fully could. But science has gotten closer, and the answer is one of the strangest things ever found inside a human mind. Your brain has no clock, not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. There is no single structure in your brain dedicated to tracking time the way your eyes track light or your ears track sound. No ticker running in the background, no internal metronome counting seconds. What you experience as the passage of time is not a recording. It's a construction. Your brain assembles the feeling of time after the fact, stitching together fragments of memory, emotion, and sensory input into something that feels continuous. But it isn't. The experience of time you're having right now is being built in real time from pieces your brain is selecting, filtering, and editing before you ever become aware of them. And the criteria it uses to build that feeling are not what you'd expect. In the 1990s, neuroscientist David Eagleman ran a series of experiments designed to map how the brain actually processes time. One of his most striking findings came from a simple test. He dropped volunteers off a 150-foot platform, a controlled free fall into a safety net below. Before the drop, he gave each person a device that flashed numbers too fast for the normal eye to read. His question was whether fear in a genuine life-threatening moment would slow their perception of time enough to read the numbers. It didn't. Nobody read the numbers. Their perception of time did not actually slow down during the fall. But here's what's fascinating. When he asked them afterward how long the fall had lasted, every single one of them estimated it as significantly longer than it actually was. Not during the experience. After it. Their brains had retroactively stretched the memory of the event, inserting more detail, more granularity, more perceived duration than the actual seconds contained. Time hadn't slowed. Memory had expanded. This is the mechanism. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Your brain doesn't experience time. It remembers it. And memory and experience are not the same thing. When you are doing something new, a first trip to a foreign city, a first week at a new job, the first days of falling in love, your brain is working hard. Everything is novel. Every detail gets encoded. Every moment gets filed. When you look back on that period later, it feels long, rich, full of texture, like it lasted forever. When you are doing something routine, the same commute, the same lunch, the same Tuesday, your brain stops encoding. It has seen this before. It knows how this goes. It files the minimum. When you look back on a routine week, you find almost nothing there. It passed without resistance, without friction, without leaving a mark. This is why childhood feels endless and your 30s disappear. When you were 7, everything was new. Every summer was an infinite country of new experiences being encoded at maximum rate. Your brain was full. The archive was thick with detail. Looking back, it feels like it lasted forever because, for your memory, it did. By the time you are 35, you have seen most of this before. The seasons follow the pattern you know. The weeks resemble each other. Your brain stops filing aggressively, and years compress into almost nothing. You blink and it's December again. You haven't lost time, you've lost novelty. And to your brain, they are the same thing. But there's another layer, and this one is harder to sit with. In the 1970s, psychologist Robert Ornstein conducted a series of experiments on what he called the storage size model of time. His theory was simple. The more information your brain processes in a given period, the longer that period feels in retrospect. He tested it by giving subjects tapes of varying complexity to listen to, some dense with information, some sparse, and asking them to estimate duration afterward. The denser the tape, the longer the subjects perceived the experience to have lasted. The brain doesn't measure time in seconds. It measures time in events. Think about the last long weekend you took somewhere new. It probably felt like a week. Think about the last long weekend weekend you spent at home doing nothing. It probably felt like an afternoon. The clock said the same thing both times. Your brain filed completely different amounts. Now think about what this means for a life. A life spent in familiar places, doing familiar things, with familiar people runs through the brain like water through clean pipe. Fast, frictionless, leaving almost nothing behind. A life built on new experiences, new challenges, new discomforts runs slowly, catches on everything, leaves a thick residue of memory. The people who feel like they have lived the most are not the ones who lived the longest. They are the ones whose brains had the most to file. Siffre understood this by the end. He didn't just lose time in that cave, he discovered what time actually was. In the absence of light, social cues, clocks, and routine, his brain had nothing external to anchor to. So it defaulted to the only thing it had, the rhythm of its own biology, sleep cycles, hunger cycles, the slow metabolic pulse of a body running in the dark. Without events to count, time became biology. And biology, it turns out, runs much slower than a clock. He emerged from the 1972 experiment severely depressed. He told interviewers that the experience had felt like dying slowly, not because anything had hurt him, because nothing had happened. The absence of events had compressed 6 months of living into what felt like a short, gray, featureless stretch of time with no edges and no texture. He called it the most terrifying experience of his life. Not the darkness, not the isolation, the formlessness, the feeling of existing without accumulating. Your brain is running the same calculation right now, every day, on everything. The reason Friday arrives before you're ready is not because the week was short, it's because the week looked like every other week. Your brain processed it on minimum power and filed almost none of it. The reason a bad day feels endless is because something is happening. Your brain is encoding at full capacity. Every minute is being written down. Pain takes up more space in memory than pleasure. Fear generates more neural detail than comfort. Novelty creates more lasting time than familiarity ever could. This is not a design flaw. This is the system working exactly as intended. Your brain evolved to conserve energy by automating the familiar and encoding only what's new, threatening, or important. In a world of constant threat and constant novelty, this worked perfectly. Every day brought new information, every season brought new challenges. The archive filled naturally. We built a world that removed almost all of that. Same roads, same screens, same routines, same weeks, and then we wonder why the years are going faster. Every human who has ever lived has felt this. The strange acceleration of a life in motion, the way a decade can arrive without warning, the specific grief of looking back at a period of your life and finding it thinner than it should be, less substantial than the time you know it contained. Siffre felt it in a cave. You feel it every January when another year has somehow passed. The mechanism is identical, the brain accounting for a life it was not fully present for. The good news, if there is any, is that the system responds to input. New place, new challenge, new discomfort, new person, new idea that your brain has never had to process before. Every one of these is a deposit. Every familiar Tuesday is a withdrawal. You cannot add seconds to your life, but you can add density. You can make your brain work harder, file more, encode the days instead of letting them pass through. Siffre climbed out of that cave, blinking in the light. Having lost a month he would never get back. You're standing in yours right now.